today is Gittin Nun Hey. We're going to start at the Mishnah. Okay, so we're going to see a number of testimonies that happened actually in front of the Academy of Yavne at the time when Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah actually became the president of the Academy. So, Ehid Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgeda al Achereshet she'is'a avia. So when we're talking about like a girl who is deaf mute, so we know that a girl who is actually, anyone who is a deaf mute is considered someone who doesn't have any da'at. It doesn't have any kind of judgment or any kind of knowledge. So the only person who, so what happens is the person who's going to actually arrange for her marriage when she is a little girl, a ktana, is actually her father. And if that happens, then it is a full-fledged kiddushim. And she's like, if there's any kind of issues, shehi yotza beget, she's entitled to actually get divorced with a regular get. So there's any kind of, there's no issue here. What Rashi says here is that if she's actually a gdola, if she's above the age of like 11, then the only way that she can actually get married is if she marry herself off, okay? And if there's like, since there's no father in this, under these circumstances, then that would be a marriage that would be only derabanan. So, but even with a marriage that would be derabanan, there would be a valid get at the same time. So, so we know as a ktana, the only person who can actually marry her off is the father. If the father, chas v'shalom, is dead, then the other people who can marry her off would be the mother or her brother. And then, and that's it. So that would be the situation. That would be the cases where she would be able to get married. Just because she is a chereshet, she's a deaf mute, and it's not easy for her to get married under those circumstances. She'i yotza beget. Okay, so she could get like, she could receive a get under all of these circumstances. Ve'al ktana bat Israel. And if like he also talked about a case where there is a ktana, so a minor girl who's like a bat Israel, so regular like Israel, sheniset lekohen. And so her father is dead, and her mother or her brother are actually going to marry her off to a Kohen. Okay, so what's the situation in terms of her being able to eat truma? She'ochelet betruma, she can, but it's going to be truma derabanan. So it's not like, it's not full truma. Ve'im meta ba'ala yoresha. And if the husband if she actually dies, then the husband is going to inherit her assets and her estate. So why is that? If that's like, in this case, like the husband would inherit from her. So Chazal actually instituted like, a takana that they wanted to make sure that there would be men who would be interested in marrying this girl because she's a chereshet, she's a deaf mute, so she's limited in her abilities. So if the husband knows that at some point of time, if ever she dies, he's going to be able to get the assets from the marriage, then it's going to be an incentive for him to actually marry her. Ve'al hamarish agazul shebanu bevira. So we're talking about like, a thief that actually steals a beam, let's say from Home Depot, okay? And he's like actually using it to build his house. She'itol et damav. So he needs to actually give back like the amount of the value of the cross beam as compensation. But we don't ask him to actually return the crossbeam itself. Mipnei takanat hashavim, and that that's the reason why we did that is so that we give him the opportunity to actually repent, right? To do tshuva. And we feel that if we ask him to return whatever it is that he has stolen, then it's unlikely that he would make tshuva. Well, if we tell him, okay, we understand you did a bad action, but at the same time, just pay back whatever it is that it is worth, then he has a better opportunity during that time to actually make tshuva. Ve'al chatat agezula shelo noda'a lerabim. And so he also talked about like a situation when you have someone who is going to, he wants to offer a chatat, but the chatat that he's actually using for, like, his korban, he's actually stolen it, right? But nobody knows about that. He's the one who knows it, but nobody else knows. She'i mechaperet mipnei tikun hamizbeach. And even though the chatat was stolen, it still has like the ability to produce, like, atonement for the in the mizbeach, because well, actually we're going to see, like in the Gemara, it's going to tell us, like, about all these cases. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara has to say about all of this. Amar Rava. So Rava is saying what? Me'aduto shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada. So when we're talking about the first testimony from Yochanan ben Gudgada, in terms of like the Chereshet, Amar le Edim. So if you have a man who actually talks to Edim with his wife not being present, and he's talking to them about like the get that he's preparing to give to her. Okay, so she's totally unaware that this is going to happen. Re'u get ze she'ani noten la v'chazar ve'amar la knesi shtar chove ze. And so he says, oh, look at this. He looks at, he shows the witnesses. This is like the get I'm going to give her. And then he goes to her and he gives her the get, but he doesn't tell her to get. He says, I am giving you this document, okay, this shtar. It's like, this loan document. That's what he tells her. And it doesn't matter that she doesn't know that it's a get. Harezo megoreshet. She is divorced. So from this, we see that actually, okay, so Milo Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgeda li lo beinan da'ata. So it's like that you actually, Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgeda, he was talking to us like in the first, in the Mishnah, that the girl who's a deaf mute, she actually is not, doesn't need to understand what is happening, right? She's not competent because she's a deaf mute, she's a chereshet, she's considered like, to not have da'at, right? But she's divorced. We see that a wife, under any circumstances, does not need to give consent to get divorced. It's like, if this, just like the way the chereshet doesn't understand what is happening, the wife doesn't need to understand. She doesn't need consent. She just like receives the document and she's being told you're divorced, and that's what it is. Achinami lo beinan da'ata. We don't need her to like realize that this is a get document. Like one way or another, she's divorced. Not very nice, but that's the way it is. Pshita. So it's like, the Gemara says, but this is like obvious. Why is it that we actually need to discuss this any further? What's the chiddush here? Mahu de tema. If you didn't have like what Rava was talking to you about like this, these witnesses, this husband discussing with the witnesses the fact that they were going to give like the document to the wife. Kevan de amar knisa shtar chov ze, right? He said, take that document, batule batlea. Here is like, it would have like nullified the get. It's like, it doesn't mean that he doesn't want to get married. It's like, it doesn't make a difference. If like, but kemashmalan, the way that what Rava is actually telling us, im ita debatla. So if it's true that he actually intended to make this like document batel, to like annul it, לעדים, הווה אמר להו, והי דכאמר אחי. It's like, he would have told the edim, and then we'd assume that the reason that he didn't tell her that the wife specifically, I am giving you a get, is because he was embarrassed. And so he didn't want to show the edim that he was in this kind of situation, but he really wanted to get divorced. And so he told her, like, take this shtar, and he led her to believe that it was like a loan, but it had nothing to do with that. It was like actually a divorce, and the divorce is effective. Ve'al ktana bat Israel, and when he talked, the Mishnah talked to us about, like, the ktana, the minor, who's getting married, who is a bat Israel, and she's married to a Kohen, and we say that she can actually eat truma, right? So why are we talking about that? Because, like, this ktana in this specific case was like married off by her mother or by her brother, and so the only kind of truma that she can eat is actually truma de Rabbanan. So what's the difference in between truma de Rabbanan and truma de Oraita? Truma de Oraita actually includes dagan, tirash, and yitzor, which is like grains, grapes, and olives, and that would be things that she would not be able, like, to actually eat. Ve'ilu chereshet lo achla, when you're talking about the chereshet, the one who was actually married to a Kohen when she was not a minor anymore, she was a gdola, she's not allowed to, like, eat truma. Maitama, why is that she's not allowed to eat truma? Gzera shama ye'achil cheresh bechereshet. So there's, like, a takana that, like, the Rabbani, gzera that the Rabbanim instituted. Why? That, like, we're concerned that we have a Kohen who himself is a cheresh, right? He's a deaf mute, and that he would actually give truma to his wife who's a chereshet. And it's like, if we would give, like, if we would allow a Kohen to give it to his, like, wife who's a chereshet, then if a regular Kohen would give truma to his wife who's a chereshet, then we're concerned that a Kohen who is a cheresh himself would do the same. So we say that she's not allowed. Ve'le'echol, so even though the wife is like a chereshet, and she is also married to a Kohen who's a cheresh, it's like, we say that she could eat truma. So, but the truma that she's eating is not de oraita, as I said before, it's truma de Rabbanan. Katan ochel nevelot hu. It's like, it's the same thing as if you have a ktana that would eat meat that is nevela, right? Which is like an animal that has not been that hasn't received, like, a proper shchita, so it's an animal that is not kosher, right? So we're trying to make sure that this doesn't happen, and that everyone is actually going to be eating, like, things that are kosher and that they are allowed to eat. Gzera shama ye'achil cheresh bepikachat. So there's, like, another gzera that if, like, the Kohen is a deaf mute, but he's actually married to a woman who is not. He's married to a pikachat. Okay, so a pikachat is someone who is intelligent, right? So because he is a cheresh, their marriage is not a full kedoshim under deoraita. It's a marriage that is valid derabanan, and so she's not allowed. The woman is not allowed to eat truma deoraita. She's only allowed to eat truma derabanan. Ve'le'echol betruma derabanan. Right. So we're allowing her, the woman who's, like, the pikachat, who's married to the cheresh, to eat the truma derabanan. So that it's like, actually, this way we're actually showing that their marriage is valid derabanan. Gzera shama ate leochle betruma deoraita. So it's like, it's a gzera that the Rabbanan actually instituted so that she would not actually come to eat truba deoraita, which is forbidden to her. Ve'al amarish agazul shebanav. So Yochanan ben Rudega is like, he's talking again. He had talked about the case where you have a thief that took a cross beam, right? Let's say from Home Depot. He's like, he stole it and he's using it to build his house, right? And what we said is that he does not need to return it. When we know that he has stolen it, he actually needs to return the value of the cross beam. Tanu Rabbanan, Gazal Merish Uvano Babira. So if he stole, like, cross beam, and he used it to build his house, Bet Shammai Omrim Me'akakea Kol Abira Kula. As far as Bet Shammai is concerned, he throws the book at him. He said, you need to take down your house completely so that you can get the beam and you can return the beam. Umachzir Marish Lebehalav. Right, he has to return the beam to its rightful owner, in this case Home Depot. Uvet Hillel Omrim en lo ela deme marish bilvad. He says, as far as Bet Hillel says, no, he doesn't need to actually return the beam itself. What he needs to do is he needs to return the value of the beam. Mishum takanat ashavin. So takanat ashavin is a concept where we want people to actually take responsibility for their actions, and we want them to be able to repent. And we feel that if we put them in a situation, Chazal felt that if you put them in a situation where there are, it's more difficult than it should be, then they're going to be resentful and they're not going to be doing tshuva. So you're trying to make it, they try to encourage people to make tshuva, and they try to make it easier for them to do it. Ve'al chatat agezula. So, and when we're talking about the situation where you have this guy who wants to offer a chatat to the Bet HaMikdash, and he steals the animal, that's really like not a good thing, to do. So the Mishnah said that actually the chatat would have effect, and it would bring kapara. Amar ula dvar Torah ben noda'a. So he said, so as far as ula is concerned, he says, if we're looking at a deoraita, and whether the people know that this animal was stolen, uven lo noda'a, or they don't know that it was stolen, ena mechaperet. As far as he is concerned, the thief does not get kapara out of this animal because it's stolen. Maitama, what's the reason as far as he's concerned? Ya'ush kede lokane. So the concept of yeush is like if you have the rightful owner of the animal for a certain amount of time, he's going to actually be looking for the animal, right? But at some point of time, he's gonna say, oh, you know what? I mean, this is done. It's like, yeah, I'm giving up. There's no hope that I'm going to get the animal back. Yeush is the loss of hope. So in this case, as far as Ula is concerned, the fact that he has lost hope is not enough for the thief to actually get kapara out of it. This is actually against what the Mishnah told us. So let's see further. So what is the reason that the Chachamim actually said that if nobody knows that the animal was stolen, that it's still mechapers, like the person who has brought the korban, shelo yehu kohanim atzuvin. So this is why? It's we don't want the kohanim to be in a situation where they're going to be sad. Sad, why? Because this animal that was stolen, right, is no longer considered a valid korban. And we wouldn't want them to be eating something. If they knew that they were eating something that was unconsecrated, then it would make them not feel good about it, right? And so they worried that they're going to be worried at all times that they're going to be eating chulin be'azara, which is forbidden. They're not allowed to eat unconsecrated korbanot in the azara. So you don't want to, and then so part of the reasoning is that we're concerned that the Kohanim at that point of time are not going to want, like, they're not going to want korbanot at all, because they're going to be concerned that everything that is brought over to them is not going to be kosher enough. אמרי לרבנן לעולה, וענן מפני תיקון המזבח תנן. So it's like, we want to allow it. We want to say that this is okay. Why? Because, like, for the benefit of the Kohanim, for the benefit of the Mizbeach, we want to make sure that actually whatever it is that is being brought is kosher, and that the Kohanim are going to be able to do their avodah without being concerned that everything that is being brought over to them is of concern. Amar lahem, kevan de kohanim atzuvin, when Ula said, like, we don't want the Kohanim would be like saddened, nimsa mizbeach batel, it's like, this is because, like, the mizbeach would be like, there would be nothing that would be going on, because the Kohanim would not want to actually do avodah. So the reason why we want to allow it is so that the Kohanim, like, have like the ability to do the avodah without being concerned. Rav Yehuda Amar the Dvar Torah. So Rav Yehuda says, like, in terms of that, the way that we see it, the Oraita, Ben Nodea, Ben Nodea Mechaperet. It's like, as far as he's concerned, it's like, once the person who owned the animal, right, and he knows that it's been stolen, and he just has he's just lost hope completely about whether that he's going to be able to get the animals back. As far as he's concerned, then it is okay for the person who has stolen the animal to get like kapara out of it. Maitama, what's his reasoning? Yeush kedekani. For him, he says that as once it's like, the owner has lost hope that he's going to be able to get the animal back, then automatically it's as if he has acquired the animal and it belongs to him. Okay, we're at the top of Nun He Amud Bet. Uma ta'am amru nodee ena mechaperet. And it's like, what is the reason why the Chachamim said that, like, when the animal has been stolen and we know about the fact that it was stolen, that the thief actually does not get kapara out of it, shelo yomru mizbeach ochel gezelot. So that people wouldn't say that, like, oh, look at what these Kohanim are doing. And it's like, on the Mizbeach, there's like, korbanot that are actually not valid and that should not be brought up there. So the Gemara is going to ask her further, Bishlema le'ula, when it comes to, like, what we just said, that actually works exactly with what Ula told us. He said that if we he said that if we don't know that the chatat was stolen, and, like, the Kohanim would not be saddened, hayinu diktane chatat. It's like, that's like, that goes like for it goes for like what the Mishnah is telling us in terms of the chatat, but not when it comes to an ola. Ela le Rav Yehuda, but when the Rav Yehuda is looking at it, he said that, like, if, like, we know that that the chatat has been stolen, then it's like, it's not valid anymore for people to actually for the Kohanim to do the avodah, because it's going to, like, not it's not going to be valid anymore. Ma'iriya chatat. It's like, so why are we talking specifically about chatat, right? Afilu ola nami. It's like, it should be the same thing as the ola. So what do we know about the ola? The ola korban is something that is completely burned on the mizbeach, right? So people would not actually say, oh, like the mizbeach, and meaning the Kohanim have, like, stolen things that they should have. So what's the difference in between the ola and the chatat? The chatat, the only part that goes on the mizbeach is the chelev and the dam, right? So it's not as significant. While, like, the ola is actually the entire animal, so we should be more concerned. Lo mibayhe ke'amar. So Rav Yehuda say that what the Tana of the Mishnah is actually trying to explain to us, it's like, we don't really need to say all of this. Lo mibayha ola de chalil hi. It's like, we didn't really need to say that we were that the animal that was stolen could not be like an ola, because that's complete, as I said, it's completely burnt on the mizbeach. Ela afilu chatat nami. But we say, even in the case of a chatat, the chelev v'dam hu desalik legabe mizbeach, where you have the chelev and the blood that actually go on the mizbeach, ve'idach kohanim achlule, and the rest of the animal is actually eaten by the kohanim, afilu achigazur. So in this case, like, the Chachamim say, it should not be offered. Shelo yomru mizbeach ochel gezelot, because we don't want people to say that the mizbeach is actually eating, things that have been stolen, i.e., in this case, the chelev and the dam. Okay. Tnan. So what else is it that the Gemara wants to know about the way that Rav Yehuda is talking about this? So what is it that we saw in our Mishnah? Al chatat agzula shelo noda'a lerabim. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgeda, he said that when you have a chatat that has been stolen and no one knows about it, shehi mechaperet mipnei tikun amizbeach, that it actually does provide kapara for, like, the benefit of the mizbeach. Bishlema leula nicha. Now that goes hand in hand in what Ula is saying. Ela le Rav Yehuda. But when it comes to the way that Rav Yehuda says, he said that when it's like when people know that the chatat has been stolen, then it does not provide kapara to the person who has brought it. Ipacha mibayhele. So shouldn't, like, the Tana of the Mishnah would have, like, say it in, like, a different way? He should have, like, actually because basically what happens is, if the korban is not good enough to be brought to the mizbeach, it's also not good enough to be, like, to be brought outside of the Bet HaMikdash. Achinami ke'amar. What is it that the Tana of the Mishnah is trying to say? Lo noda'a mechaperet. If we don't know about the fact that the animal has been stolen, then it brings kapara. Nodea ena mechaperet. But in the case where people know that the animal has been stolen, then it's not providing kapara to the person who has brought it. Mipne tikun amizbeach, so that people are not going to say that the mizbeach is actually, like, stealing goods or whatever it is that is being brought. Metiv Rava. So now the Gemara is looking at the way that Ula is talking about it, right? So Rava is coming and he's saying that we have a baraita, ganav vehigdish ve'achar kar tavach umachar. So someone who actually steals an ox or a sheep or goat, an animal, right? And magdish it, right? And then he actually does shchita, or he actually sells it, meshalem tashlume chefel. So he's supposed to pay the value of the animal twice to the owner. Ve'eno meshalem tashlume arba'a v'chamisha. But he doesn't pay, like, the fourth and the fifth payment, which is actually like the penalties that are would be normally applied to property that is consecrated. Vetane ula, and so what is like vetane ela? I'm sorry, is bachutz kihi gavna. it's like the way that we're looking at it in the Baraita in reference to the Mishnah is what? Is that if the animal was like slaughtered outside the Bet HaMikdash, Anush Keret, he karet, actually, it's like not only, it's like, he's like, he cannot be brought as a korban, but it doesn't belong to that person, but he's actually liable for karet, right? Because you're not allowed to actually slaughter an animal outside of the Bet HaMikdash, right? So that's like, that's completely like liable for karet. Ve'i amart yeush kedi lo kaneh. And if you say, oh, it's like, that when the original owner has like forgotten that, like, not forgotten, he's like, he's abandoned the idea that he's going to actually see this animal ever again, it's not enough for the thief to actually be the rightful owner of this animal. And so kadet me avidete. And so here, why is it that we actually are talking about karet all together, right? Because like we're not talking about we're talking about we know that there's no additional penalty for like if the owner of the animal is going to be actually slaughtering his animal outside of the Bet HaMikdash. So we're really like want to know why it is that we're talking about karet all together. Amar Rav Shizbi karet mideverehem. So it's like, Rav Shizbi is explaining, Ula is going to tell us in the Baraita that actually the thief who is slaughtering like the animal outside of the Bet HaMikdash is going to get karet because the Chachamim have actually put in a gzera to that effect specifically. Ve'ichu ale. And so when Rav, the students, like, who listened actually to Rav Shizbi, they're like, when he said that, they started laughing and they said, karet midevrehem mi'ika. It's like, what is this thing? What is like this whole concept about karet that actually is like brought by the Chachamim, right? It's not some karet, it's like we know, it's like mina shamayim, that has nothing to do with like people in general. So how the Chachamim actually can talk about this? Amar lehu Rava, Gavra Rabba, Amar Milta, there's a great man, like, the Rav Shizbi, he said, Lo techuchu hala. Do not laugh at this. Okay, that's definitely not like a laughable matter. There's like merit to this whole concept. Why? Karet she'al yedeh divrehen bata lo. It's like, when someone is like doing something that he's not supposed to like to be doing, karet is going to hit him because the Chachamim have instituted such a thing. And how is it? Okmu harabanan bereshute. It's like if the Chachamim said that the animal is in the possession of the thief, ki echli deli chayev ala. So it's like, they would actually specifically put it in his possession so that he would set himself up in a situation where he's going to like slaughter it outside the temple, outside the Bet HaMikdash, and so he would actually be it's hefker bet din hefker. It's like, he doesn't own it, and so this and for this he wouldn't own it either if it had been abandoned. Amar Rava ha vadai kami beili. So it's like, and there's like there's something that I need like to actually figure out here. That's what Rava wants to know. Ki okmu arabanan bereshute. It's like when the Chachamim actually put this animal in the thief's hands, right? They decided, oh yeah, this guy, he's actually he owns the animal. Mishat geneva, from the time like they actually make it retroactive in terms of the ownership of the animal, or mishat agdesha. or is it from the time that actually the animal is being magdish? Lemay nafkamina, what's the difference here? Legizutehe ul ladoteha. It's like there would be a difference in terms of like when you do like the shearing of the when the of the wool of the animal. So what's the and then what's the halacha in this case? Hadar amarava mistabre mishaat agdisha. It's like, then Rava says, you know what, you're right. It's like this ownership, it doesn't go back to the time when the thief has actually taken the animal. It actually takes effect at the time that he decides to makdish the animal. Shelo yehe chote niskar, so that he's not going to actually be able to benefit from the fact that he has stolen the animal, and only he's only going to be able. He's going to be punished for the fact that he's trying to makdish an animal that is stolen. Okay, period. Now we move on to a completely different thing, and we're going to talk about what happens at the time of the Beit Sheni, right? And the Romans started conquering Eretz Israel. And one of the things, we're just going to put it in the back of our mind because it will be important later. They believe that Yehuda is the one who killed Esav. Okay, and they were very angry at Shevet Yehuda. So that's something that we need to remember. And so what happened is during that time, people would give their properties over to the Romans so that they would leave them alone. Okay, so lo haya sikrikon beYehuda. It's this law of sikrikon, which is to give over their properties over to the Romans. It did not apply in in Yehuda. Beharuge milchama, at the time when people were being killed during the war. Meharuge amilchama ve'elech, after that period of time when they were, so that was Titus who was having the goyim kill the Jews, right? So during that time, there was no sikrikon in Yehuda. And afterwards, yesh ba sikrikon, after that period of time when that was the war was over, then the law of sikrikon actually took place also in Yehuda. So that meant that what happened? You buy a property, and that was a property that was originally confiscated, right? It's still considered to be a valid transaction, and everything belonged to them. And then when they stopped doing that, then the halacha of sikrikon kicked in, and then they would actually not be able to buy any kind of properties because the Romans would confiscate them right away. Ketzad. So what is this exact law? Lakach misikrikon. So a Jew acquired a land that was that had been actually confiscated from another Jew. V'chazar v'lakach me'ba'al habayit. And then he actually went back and he bought it over from the person who actually owned it originally, right? The one that it had been confiscated from. Makhu batel. It's this whole transaction is null and void. Miba'al habayit, if the Jew actually goes and he buys a piece of land from the original owner, v'chazar v'lakach misikrikon, and then after that he goes to the sikrikon and he says, okay, I'm buying this piece of land, mekhu kayam. At that point of time, then the sale is valid, and he doesn't need to do anything further with this. So then we're going to talk about a different kind of halacha that actually looks like sikrikon. And so we're talking about a law where you have a situation where you have a husband who has mortgaged a piece of land, so against his wife Ketubah. Lakach min ha'ish, if someone actually buys the land from the husband, okay, v'chazar v'lakach min ha'isha, and then he goes back and he says, okay, I'm going to buy, like, the lien over from you, from the wife, makru batel. He's like, the whole transaction is null and void. Min aisha, if he actually goes to the woman and he said, I'm going to buy over whatever is like owed on this land, and I'm going to release you from the lien. Vechazar velakach min aish, and then he goes to the husband and he says, I'm buying the land over from you, makru kayam. Then the sale is actually valid. So in that case, in the second case, the woman is the one who's the initiator, right? She's the one who actually wants the cash against the lien that has been placed on the piece of land that she owned originally. And the husband agrees to the transaction. And that's how the sale is valid. So now we're going to talk about, like, later on in like at the time of the Mishnah, right? So Zu Mishnah Rishona. So this, like, this law of Sikrikon is actually from the time of like the very the beginning of the Mishnah, which is like, year 200. This is like what the Chachamim have like instituted. Bet din shel acharem amru. So when you have a bet din that comes and that actually say halokeach misikrikon, if someone actually buys like a land that was like, that had been confiscated, noten leba'alim revi'ah. So he has to actually, that person who's going to buy this piece of land that had been originally confiscated has to give 25% to the original of the value to the original owner, and then he can keep the land for himself. Ematai, when is it that this like halacha actually takes place? Bizman she'en biyadan likach. So it's like it's at the time when the rightful owner of the piece of land does not have any kind of money to buy back the land from Sikrikon. Aval yesh beyadan likach. If the person to whom the land belonged to originally have the means to pay for this land and to buy it back, hen kodmin lechol adam, then he's the one who has like first dibs and who can buy, like, back his own property. Rabbi Hoshiv Bet Din. So Rabbi, he says, okay, it's like, let's convene a Bet Din here. Nimnu she'im she'ata bifne sikrikon shnaim asar chodesh. And he said like, if you actually have like this land that has been confiscated and that stays in like the hand of the sikrikon, of the Romans, for 12 months, kol akodem likach zacha. It's like anyone can actually get this piece of land from sikrikon, and at this point of time, the Baal does not have like first dibs. Aval noten leba'alim revi'ah, but they have to give like 25% to the person who actually owned it originally. All right, so let's see what the Gemara has to say about this. Hashta beharuge amilchama lo haya basikrikon. When you have like during the first period of time where where there was war and the Romans were actually taking away the pieces of land from the were supposed to take the pieces of land like from the Yehudim. There was no sikrikon in Yehuda, okay? Meharge milchama ve'elach yesh ba sikrikon. So how is it that we can say that the Mishnah is telling us that after the period of time where people were being killed, like during the war, that the halacha changed and there was sikrikon in the region of Yehuda, right? So it should have been during all the times. So let's see what the Gemara has to tell us about this. Amar Rav Yehuda. So he's trying to explain what the Mishnah is saying. Lo danuba din sikrikon ke amar. So he says, well, it's like, the halacha of sikrikon was not like, did not take place in Yehuda during the time when there was milchama, when there was war. The Amar Rabbi Asi, Shalosh Gezerot Gazru. So there were like three different edicts that were that took place during that time, that were instituted by Titus, right? So what happened to the? Let's see what happened. The first two took place during the war. The last one, the third one, took place after the war. Gezerta kaimata. So the first one, kol delo katil lekikt luhu. Anyone who, if he has an opportunity to kill a Jew, doesn't do it, then it's going to be, he should be killed. The second one is metziata, kol dekatil leyate arba'a zuze. Anyone who kills a Jew has to actually remit 4 zuze. He has to pay for the fact that he has killed a Jew. Metariata, and the last one was kol dekatil lekitlut hu. And anyone who actually kills a Jew will be killed himself. So it's like, it evolves like as it goes. So why is that? Ilkach kamata umetziata. So the first and the second one were like edicts that were put in place during the war. Kevan dekatle, so that like the Ovdei Kochavim would actually be able to kill any of the Jews that they wanted without being scared that anything would happen to them. And also, it's like, it would, agav anusea gamer vek makne, the Jews were like very concerned for their lives. So they let go of their properties in 10 seconds. They didn't want to get like, any further in trouble. And at that point, the Sichikon was able to get, didn't have to actually be put in place because they automatically were letting go of the piece of property. Betayata amre, and like the last one, right, which was after the war, so they had some protections, the Jews, because what happened, Titus like said, anyone who kills a Jew is going to be killed himself. So Aidana lishkol. So they would say, what are they going to say? The Jews say, you know what, you want to take my land? Take my land. And what would happen? Lemachar te avnale bedina. I'm going to go tomorrow to court. I'm going to get it back. So don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm okay. So the last piece we're going to introduce, we're talking about like after like, there was like the war about the Romans on Yehuda. We're going to talk about like, there's going to be a lot of Agadata from here on. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mai dichtiv, Ashre Adam mifached tamid umakshe libo yipol bera'a. So with this whole concept about like, that a man is supposed to like pay attention to, to actually the ramifications of his actions, right? It's like, every action that we take has consequences. So anyone would have to think about what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're learning, if they're like actually behaving in a proper, in the proper manner. And then if they do that, then they shouldn't have like any kind of issues. It's like, you don't want to be in a situation where people are saying, oh, like, this is happening to me because I didn't do this or I didn't do that or like whatever. So if you look at yourself like on a regular basis, and it's like, that should never happen. Akmitsa uvar kamtsa haruv Yerushalayim. So there was like, there was something that happened in with Kamsa and Bar Kamsa and Yerushalayim ended up like being completely destroyed, right? Ater tarnegola utarnegolata haruv tur malka. It's like, and there was like a story involving a rooster and a hen, and then Har Amelech was like actually destroyed. Ashka derivsak derispak haruv betar. And then there was like another story which was actually is going to involve like a carriage. and the town of Betar was actually destroyed. So we're going to stop here. Tomorrow we're going to see every single one of these stories in details and what they actually have to do with the concept of of looking at your own actions and examining them to make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Miriam. You have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.